What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring you incredible guests from all over the world. So sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is the CEO and founder of Startup Science. He is a visionary leader, TEDx speaker, a connector, but not only that, he has level 1 autism, level 5 dyslexia. He's a savant and has synesthesia. Please welcome Gregory Shepard. Gregory, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you are definitely breaking barriers and breaking labels just by that introduction alone. Can you enlighten us? I don't know where to begin because that's a lot.
Yeah, I think I'll just give you a quick story. So, my dad was actually a priest and my mom was a nun, and then they left the church to foster and adopt children.
Oh,
And
wow.
then so they adopted a bunch of kids of different nationalities, and those are my siblings. And then I was autistic, as a little kid, and I got beat up a lot and stuff. So we lived in Oakland, which is at that time was like an active war zone. And then my parents moved us to the mountains and got a piece of property, and we lived in tents while we built our own house.
Wow.
Um, and then I started like lots of little businesses, through that whole time. And I had been diagnosed with autism when I was little, but my mom didn't want me to be labeled, so she didn't let it happen.
Sure.
But I was in special ed, my whole life. I barely graduated from high school. I went to like 7 high schools. They were trying to figure out what to do with me because of the savant side of it.
Sure.
So,
So,
and what it is basically is autism is basically there's 7 neurodivergent conditions, and I have all 7 of them, and that's what autism is.
yeah.
And then dyslexia, my case, it's like reading maybe while you're somebody shaking the page.
Okay.
Um, and then savant syndrome means that I hate that they say syndrome, but it comes with it.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I
Yeah,
like the
but
word savant because it means something. It's like special.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
way.
yeah. So if you saw Rain Man,
Yeah.
the movie Rain Man, that's a savant.
Okay.
And we all have different things. Mine's patterns. And then synesthesia means that I experience feelings through colors, and I have thoughts that are like shapes.
Okay.
So I see things like shapes in the sky. I used to think I was crazy when I was younger until I got diagnosed, and I was like, oh, I'm not crazy. That this is how some people think about things.
So, despite all that, though, you've reached an incredible level of success. So, I don't want to like really highlight too much of you go working through a lot of those issues. I kind of want to come to a point where you started really achieving success despite all those things.
Yeah, I've built and sold 12 companies. I've won 4 private equity awards for transactions between 250 and a billion.
Yeah.
I sold 2 companies to eBay. I studied why, when, and how founders fail, and then wrote a book about that. I've done TEDx talks. I mean, I built a school for founders to help founders not fail. Because I also went into politics, and I was the chairman for congressional candidates. That's how I met Obama a
Wow.
couple of times. But I couldn't help with getting women and people of color into Congress as much as I wanted to. So what I did is I started a school for entrepreneurship to help out people with, what I call it opportunity equality,
Yeah.
because wealth equality is a product of opportunity equality. So I started this school and I give it away free to people. And now it powers like Harvard and Stanford and MIT and Columbia and all these universities that I could never get into, actually. And and so that's all of those things.
So, I have a question for you. The people that have been labeled with things that you have, and someone's listening to this and they're saying, "No way, that's not possible." How is that possible for someone like yourself?
You know, yeah, I'll tell you that I have like crutches, right? Like I have a special software on my phone, on my computer, that reads to me,
Yep.
and I speak to it, and it helps me like you're a blind person. I use
Right.
blind people software. to help me out because everything is scrambled all the time. So, and then I hire people around me, or I work with people that where I'm strong, I dominate, and where they're strong and I'm weak, they fulfill for me. So it has to do with surrounding yourself by processes. It's really important to have processes. I have a huge amount of processes and systems, and then people that help you in the areas that, where a lot of people, we're not very good at everything,
Yeah.
so
Well, yeah, true. And
yeah.
that's a great quality or skill of a good leader, is someone that knows their weaknesses and hires people to fill in those roles to support them, to really amplify their strengths. So, because
Yeah.
I'm a former leader, an executive leader, so I know what that's like. I'm not strong at everything. I think that I am sometimes, but I'm not.
Yeah. And then I have this thing, I call it basically, you need a handful of things, 5 things, and there's one for each finger, and it's focus, drive, enthusiasm, discipline, and optimism. So I sharpen those skills constantly so I can make up for the areas where, like, wherever I'm weak, I apply a lot of consistent persistency and discipline.
Okay.
So, like last year I swam a marathon and I have asthma. So, I just kept pushing and I just kept going and going and until no matter what it takes. And it's the same thing with everything.
Yeah.
I think actually my mom told me something. My mom was an amazing, wonderful person. And she told me one time that, the thing that's different about me is that I'm okay with being uncomfortable, and I'm okay with things being hard because things have always been hard for me. So for me, trying really hard and having things be hard is normal,
Yeah.
So I think some people where things are easier, they have to get used to it.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. It's your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. I'm here to share an exciting opportunity with you. I've recently partnered with securevpn.io. They specialize in protecting your online activity, such as transactions, your online searches, your privacy protection, and it protects you from any data leakage from hackers out there that have access to your information. So please click the link in bio and take advantage of this special opportunity with securevpn.io. Again, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free.
So, how did you figure out the processes that worked for you to allow you to achieve your success? Did it take a lot of time, or what was it, like trial and error? What did that look like for you in your journey?
I map everything out in algorithms. In
Okay.
fact, I even have like this conversation has these little algorithms that we are going through,
Okay.
and which are mathematical processes. So, I do that with my whole life. So I have things separated into categories. So like personal, family, and then there's subcategories like health, wealth, education, things like that. And then even subcategories under that, like vocabulary or whatever. And so I have things separated out and things I need to learn. And every year on my birthday, I make a list of all of the things I want to master. And then
Sure.
I put reminders in my calendar to remind me about these things. I call them habits to keep and habits to break. And I have reminders that come up in my calendar that tell me what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And then I track all this stuff. So
Wow.
it's like a big spreadsheet. So for me, it's a lot because I have a lot of moving parts in my life. But do you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean, and I think it's amazing. And what a great example of overcoming not only labels that society has put on you, right? Or doctors have put on you, or something that you've just had to accept as a part of your life. You haven't allowed any of those things to hold you back, and just to be an incredible human being and to accomplish all these things.
Oh, well, you're saying very kind things, and I appreciate that. Um, I believe that one of the reasons why I did the TED Talk was because I was trying to show people like there's a lot of people out there like me that have been told they can't do anything, or
Right.
they told me I should go dig ditches and
Yeah.
stuff, and you know, uh, and and so I think there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that we all have the same hardware. It's
Mm-hmm.
the software, and that is neuroplasticity, meaning we can change our software. It's
Mm.
just a process of learning. So if that's the case, we are AI. And what do
Yeah.
you do with AI? You teach it, and then it learns from what it learns, and so on. So if you want to change your life, then you have to change your processes.
Yeah.
And that starts with understanding that you have the same hardware to begin with, and you're not, everybody has the same stuff to start out with. We don't have the same money, and we don't have the same, like for me, I don't have the academic skills that other people have, but they don't have things that I have. So you have to figure out what are the things that are your superpowers.
Yeah.
In autism, with neurodivergent people, we call them our superpowers.
Yeah.
And whatever your superpowers are, you focus on those, and then you don't think about where you're weak, except for the fact that you understand where they are, and bridge it. You know what I mean? Does
Oh
that,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense.
No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
making total sense. Absolutely.
Great.
So tell us about your TEDx talk. What is it about?
It's about overcoming obstacles. It's about autism, but it's mostly about overcoming obstacles because, you know, um, I read it like a fourth grade level, like when I'm at a restaurant, my wife has to read the menu to me, or I have a special thing I put over the words so I can see only one word at a time.
Okay.
Um, and so it's really hard, right?
Sure.
And it's frustrating, really frustrating. But on an ongoing basis, you focus on those things, and yeah, it's extra work, and it's really hard, and it's frustrating. But that's the same for other people that have all
Yeah.
kinds of things, and you see somebody who is missing a leg, and they have a wheelchair or a crutch, right?
Yeah.
But they get through their life. Somebody
Exactly.
that's blind has a cane. So if you have whatever it is going on in your life, you have those things too. So take
Overcome.
advantage of that way of thinking.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I've had quite a few people on my show that are autistic. I actually there's one girl in particular that it sticks in my mind. It was a mother and daughter, and the daughter suffered from autism, and the mother was an advocate for her to really encourage her to chase her dreams and do what she wanted to do. And I really don't like this label of autism because I feel like people that have that, it's almost like a gift because they do have special skills that a lot of people that don't have that, the other people like myself, I don't have those skills. And it's just, so for you to be on the show and talk about that openly and just acknowledge some of those things is just beautiful.
Oh, thanks. So the way it works is that savant, what that means is that we have areas that are genius or above genius, like Einstein was a savant, right? So the way a spectrum works, I think this is the way and so whenever I explain it, this is how I explain the autistic spectrum.
Okay.
Like imagine a box of crayons,
Yeah.
and each crayon has a different color, and some of those crayons are taller than others. And the tall ones are where you're really good, and the short ones are where you're maybe not as good. So autism means you have them all. So they're not all equal though. Every autistic
Right.
person have different lengths of crayons. Does that make sense?
Oh
And
yeah.
each color of a crayon represents things like sensory, and sensory is broken out into all of our senses: touch, taste,
Yeah.
smell, and everything. So savant syndrome is the same. It's like a spectrum. So
Sure.
one thing some people are really incredible at, I have my mind that's really incredible, and then other areas it's low. And the problem comes in the distance between the two. So you
Okay.
have one area where you're functioning at a level in your brain that's so high, and then I have to try to like break that down to something more linear. I think
Okay.
in dimensions,
Sure.
and so it's very complicated. And I have to like translate that, and I'm doing it now, and translate and break it down to words which are so insufficient for thought, for
Okay.
especially somebody that's on the spectrum, because our thoughts are so much more dynamic and expansive and dimensional than like words which are just linear.
Right.
One word
Yeah.
in front of another. It's not, you can't do four words at the same time, which is
Yeah.
how I think.
So
If that
what are your strengths?
um I'm really good at organization, but basically my savant, the big one is patterns.
Okay.
So I see patterns everywhere all the time, and because I see the patterns, I have the ability to understand how things function. And once I understand how things function, then I understand how to optimize them or break them
Oh,
or
interesting.
like disrupt things, in business. because I can see the holes in between.
Yeah.
Like when people are looking at a fence, and there's the little space in between the fence, right?
Sure.
Between the boards. And
Yeah.
everybody sees the fence, but I see what's in between. I don't even see the fence most of the time because it just doesn't matter to me. I want to know what's behind it.
Right.
So that allows me to see things in a different way than other people. So that's an advantage, because if everybody's seeing one thing and you're seeing the same thing differently, you automatically have an advantage.
For sure. I love that. I think that's amazing. That's a very special skill set to have. Can you give us an example where it has helped you in your business acumen, that some of your successes, or just give us one example of a success where that has allowed you to arise above?
Yeah, so I can tell you, like right now, I'm working, I have this startup science, which is the school for
Yes.
startups, right? That I license to universities, and I license to, accelerators and all that stuff. And what I noticed when I looked at the whole startup ecosystem was all of these fragmented parts, like a galaxy. In
Yeah.
the center of a galaxy is gravity, and the gravity is the founders, and all the little pieces, which are these sub-solar systems, which would be like a solar system, like our sun and our moons and our planets that rotate around ours, is like a section of the solar system. But
Sure.
I see the whole galaxy, right? So because I see that, I can figure out how to optimize and how to take advantage of the whole thing holistically. So
Okay.
in the case of startups, I saw like investors are part of it, and I saw founders and mentors and banks and people trying to sell software to them, and all of these little components, all fragmented and broken out, but really they're all part of one ecosystem. In other words, one galaxy. And so all I have to do is put the gravity in the center and suck them all in, like our galaxy rotates
Sure.
around the supermassive black hole.
Right.
So it's that is an example of something that I see that's broken little fragments, but they all should be connected. You know, just like the idea of, if you're trying to deal with equality in
Yeah.
the world, right? And you see inequality, then you have to dig down and see the whole ecosystem, the whole galaxy of inequality. And what you see with that is it starts out with lack of education, and then it moves up from there, right? And it starts out from generation to generation, right? So
Yeah.
I have siblings of different nationalities. So if you look at like Black people as an example, and you think about the fact that just 200 years ago, these people were let loose with nothing, less than nothing.
Yeah.
And they said, here, you're free, and gave them nothing. And they had
Right.
to start with nothing, zero, less than nothing. And then racism continues even still to this day. Well, it's no wonder, right? Versus if you look at white people that came here from up until I think it was 1970, the United States wasn't letting anybody in this country that wasn't white from Europe. So those people were granted land. So they were started with something, and
Right.
that grew because the people with and the people without were looked at differently. So this is an example of seeing something from the pieces and then
Mm.
understanding the trail that led to where we are now in multiple situations, founder failure, politics,
Sure.
inequality, all of that stuff. So I don't know, maybe I'm just not making
No,
sense.
no, no, you're making total sense. Stop, stop, stop. Don't. You're making perfect sense. So your startup science, this is perfect for who would it help?
If you're trying to start a business where you're raising cash and trying to get off the ground, that's what we built it for. And it's free. It's got all these micro learning classes, so people can go in and take it free. We have 180,000 investors in there.
Wow.
It's everything in the startup ecosystem, and I give it away because if you can't afford to go to school, or if you're like me and you're neurodivergent and you can't, we set it up with watch, listen, read, and experience. So it has all the different ways people learn, and you can get in there free,
Okay.
and then you could get yourself going. But that's why I did it, was to try to. I felt bad. I sold this one company to eBay, and I was the chief strategy officer for eBay Enterprise, and then the chief technology officer. And during that time frame, I first exited, and I bought a Ferrari and I bought a Bentley and all that kind of stuff. And
Wow.
I was driving around, and I just uh, felt like such a ass. I was, feeling
A
like the way
douchebag?
that yeah, exactly. I was driving around, and I was seeing people around me that looked like my family.
Yeah.
when I was growing up, and I felt like it was making them feel bad.
Mm. Mm.
So I sold everything. I gave the money away, and now I just drive a Dodge truck.
There you go. If that makes you happy and that's more purposeful for your life, that makes sense. Gregory, I love this conversation. I think I have questions for days. Where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more?
So my website is gregoryshepard.com. It's SHEPARD. And then it's got all the stuff on there if you want to, if anybody cares. And then if you want, on that same website, there's a link that says Visionaries. And if you click on that, that'll give you access to the platform for free. And I appreciate you talking to me. I feel really special that you want to talk to me and that people even want to listen. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a total pleasure. And I actually am going to introduce you to Devin Wieters. She has got a podcast called Wheel with It Pod, and I think you would love to meet with her. She was on the show actually. But actually, this is the part of the show I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. Gregory, what are you going to leave with us today?
I think that you need to know as a human being that you are capable of way more than you even think that's possible, but you don't know until you do it. You
Yeah.
know, um, I was sitting at the end of a boat last week looking at sharks swimming underneath me, and I jumped in the water without a cage. And I jumped in
Wow.
the water and I swam with these sharks, and it's one of my biggest fears. And I did that so I could push myself past it. And if you do that on an ongoing basis, you learn that that these things are really just you're blocking your own self.
Yeah.
That would be, sorry, I don't have like any fancy word of wisdom.
Oh, that's beautiful. My husband actually would love to do what you did last week. That is actually one of my biggest fears. I'm deathly afraid of sharks, but I agree. We have to push past those limits that we have in our minds, because we are capable of so much more than we think. We are capable of so much more than what anybody else thinks that we are capable of, right? And so I think your story is beautiful, and you're a great example of what is possible and the things that you have done despite some of what people might think limiting tools in your chest. You are successful because of them. So Gregory, thank you so much for sharing your story and for all the work that you're doing in the world. We appreciate you and just love you to death.
Oh, well, namaste. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.